You've heard the whisper before, the one beneath the noise of thought, softer than breath, yet louder than thunder when you dare to listen. It is not memory, and it is not fantasy. It is the voice that carries your world forward, shaping the clay of the moment with every unseen word. Not the words spoken aloud to others, but those spoken silently to yourself, within the still cathedral of your own mind. For what you inwardly say, you outwardly live, and every unfolding scene of your world is merely the echo of a conversation you've already had. But few dare to trace the origin of their reality back to this sacred place. Most cry out in frustration when life seems fixed, hard-edged, indifferent. They plead, they pray, they push, never realizing that the only true altar is the one within. And upon that altar, the sacrifice is your attention, your belief, your tone. Your inner speech is not commentary, it is creation. It is not a reaction to the world, it is the womb of the world. You believe you are responding to what is, but you are always in dialogue with what is becoming. And that dialogue, whether murmured in anxiety or whispered in peace, becomes flesh and walks among you. You have been told, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and so it remains. The beginning of all things in your life is the word you speak within, not once, but continually, not with your mouth, but with your consent. Most assume manifestation is a moment, a flash, a miracle, a shift. But the divine truth is more subtle. Creation is cumulative. Each inward statement, however fleeting, leaves its imprint upon the field of consciousness. And when those impressions repeat, they solidify a pattern, a personality, a life. You do not need to shout in the silence. You do not need to beg. You do not need to persuade the universe. You only need to notice the tone of your inner whisper. Is it complaint or celebration? Is it regret or remembrance? Is it rehearsing lack or resting in fulfillment? For every inner conversation is a seed, and your attention is the soil. What you dwell upon, what you rehearse in imagination, what you answer to in the stillness, that takes root. And soon, without force or strain, it blossoms into experience. This is why you can never truly escape yourself. The self you converse with in the unseen is the one who shapes the scene. Change the dialogue, and the world reshapes itself around your new identity. You are never punished for your inner speech. You are only compelled to live it out. Most speak as if life is happening to them, never realizing they are the author of the dialogue beneath the drama. They say, "No one hears me. I can't win. It's too late." And so the script continues, faithful to the rehearsal. But the sacred reversal begins when you become conscious of what you are saying inside yourself, and why. Feel the shift that happens even now as you become aware of your own narration, the tone of your mind, the posture of your heart. You are speaking reality into form without waiting for permission. What if the world outside is not the evidence of what is true, but the residue of what was believed? What if you have never once reacted to life, but only to your own inner assumptions, projected outward like shadows on the wall? Notice what stirs in you as this settles, a quiet remembrance perhaps, a strange clarity. You may find yourself feeling both empowered and exposed, for to know this truth is to be unable to unknow it. You are the operant power, always have been. There is no exception, there is no intermission. Even in sleep, you rehearse the world that greets you. And here is what few realize. The world does not respond to your desires. It responds to your assumptions. It listens, not to your pleading, but to your inner posture, to what you are certain of, when no one is watching. What you habitually return to, like a well-worn path, becomes the path that others walk upon to reach you. This is not theory. This is law. It is written not in books, but in your being. And as you begin to observe it, not with judgment, but with awe, you will sense the sacred mirror turning toward you. The outer is but the inner unveiled. But what if even this understanding is still on the surface? What if your inner speech is not just a tool of manifestation, but the very evidence that you are God remembering Himself, that every word you speak in imagination is the Word made flesh? Which brings us to the deeper mystery, hidden in the silence between your thoughts. And as that mystery stirs in you, you begin to realize something sacred has always been at play. Your inner speech is not merely soundless thought, but the echo of the Word, through which all things are formed. You are not speaking to yourself in isolation. You are communing with the infinite, cloaked in the costume of your own voice. Every inward phrase is a ripple through eternity, returning to you as form, as fate, as feeling. There is no separation between the voice within and the world without. The two are one. Like light and its reflection, they differ only in appearance. What you accept inwardly becomes the scenery of your outer stage. It comes not as reward or punishment, but as the mirror's reply to your self-image. You speak, and it is so not because you are trying to make it happen, but because that is how this dream unfolds. You live inside a law so perfect, so faithful, that it will never betray the tone of your being. If you carry the inner conversation of lack, the world nods and brings more emptiness. But the moment you speak abundance, not as a wish, but as a fact already felt, the world begins its silent rearrangement. This is why the teaching is never to struggle with appearances, but to revise the inner word. Let the weak say, I am strong, not because they are pretending, but because in the act of declaring, the new state is assumed, and assumption is creation. You become what you claim in the secret chambers of imagination. Most walk through life narrating what is, as if their voice must be loyal to fact. They say what they see and believe it honest. But you were never meant to be a reporter. You are the author. You are not here to echo the world, but to reshape it by what you dare to affirm in stillness. So when something unwanted appears, speak not of it, but from its opposite. Revise the moment. Enter the scene anew. For it is not what happens that matters, but what you conclude within yourself about what happens. The moment you accept a thing as true inwardly, it gains life. The moment you say within, this is who I am, the world makes way for it, with quiet invisible obedience. There is no need to wait, no need to strive, only the willingness to dwell in the inner dialogue of the already fulfilled, not as fantasy, but as identity, not as escape, but as homecoming. You are not imagining to get, you are remembering what already is in the eternal now, made visible through your inner consent. Pause and notice now, the soft current of your thoughts. What are you saying to yourself in this breath? Beneath the words, are you narrating delay or arrival? Are you assuming rejection or welcome? Are you murmuring failure or victory dressed as stillness? This is not meant to cause tension, but illumination, for awareness alone is transformative. Once seen, the spell breaks. You no longer play the part of the powerless voice, but awaken as the word itself. You don't need to fix every thought. You need only choose what to dwell in. What you repeat inwardly with feeling becomes the rhythm your life dances to. Begin to hear your own inner speech, not as background noise, but as the script of tomorrow. Speak deliberately, lovingly, boldly, not to force the world, but to remember your place as its origin. And you will find this astonishing truth emerging. When you change your inner conversation, you don't need to convince others. You won't need to prove or argue or justify. The world will simply shift its tone to match yours. People will reflect back your new assumption without even knowing they are doing so. This is the gentle power of the law. It does not rush. It does not fight. It simply becomes. And all you need do is return again and again to the still voice within that knows the end has already happened. But what if the voice of doubt still lingers? What if the old stories still echo in the silent corridors of your mind? Do you fight them? Do you wrestle them into silence? Or is there another way, softer, subtler, more faithful to the divine within? You do not need to silence the doubt, for even doubt is only a shadow cast by belief. You need only turn your gaze inward, gently, and begin a new conversation, not by force, not by denial, but by replacing the old rhythm with one more faithful to who you truly are. You do not wrestle with the darkness. You light the lamp, and that lamp is lit the moment you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, not as a performance, but as a resting place, a knowing so deep, so still, that the old voices have no room to speak. They dissolve, not by argument, but by disuse. For every time you repeat the old story within, you give it life, you give it breath. But the moment you choose the new story and dwell in it, not as something to reach, but as something remembered, you sever the roots of the former identity. You don't need to push it away. You simply no longer live there. Imagine yourself now standing in a quiet field. The old voice whispers its familiar doubts, its practiced complaints. But this time, you do not answer. You look toward a different horizon. You speak, softly, inwardly, as one who knows the truth. I am already all I desire to be. And in that inner speech, the former voice fades. It no longer finds echo within you. This is how you change your world, not by effort, but by attention, not by fixing the outer, but by becoming faithful to the inner path you choose to inhabit. Every assumption you dwell in becomes a garment, a new skin, a new world. You live it, and it lives you. The beauty of this law is in its mercy. It asks not where you have been, but only where you now dwell. It holds no record of your former speech. It mirrors only what you are now assuming in stillness. You could have thought 1,000 thoughts of failure, and yet one steady assumption of victory will rewrite the scene. So when the old identity tries to return, when it knocks and calls itself familiar, you do not resist it in fear. You simply turn again inward, and speak as the one you have chosen to become. The world is not testing you, it is yielding to you. It awaits your declaration, not your defense. As you revise your inner conversations, you will notice the outer world responding in ways you could never plan. You will find yourself met with new faces, new openings, new harmonies, all of which seem to arrive of their own accord. But they are only the visible arrangements of your inward declaration. What you assume in imagination, with feeling, becomes the law of your being. The word spoken in silence becomes the form seen in time, and so you no longer beg for change. You embody it. You wear it inwardly, until it becomes the only truth you answer to. This is not pretending. This is not escaping. This is waking up to who you have always been beneath the roles and rehearsals. You are the one who speaks worlds into being. You are the voice behind the veil, and when you speak from love, from wholeness, from certainty, creation bends to your tone. Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, not by effort, not by will, but by a new assumption repeated in sacred rhythm, a new inner conversation, chosen with love, sustained with faith. You do not need to make it happen. You need only assume it is already so, not with strain, but with surrender, not with urgency, but with peace, as though waking from a dream where you had forgotten yourself, and now in this breath, remembering. Let the new story speak through you. Let it become the background hum of your soul. Let it color the space between thoughts. Do not wait for the world to reflect it. Speak it now, as your identity, and the world will follow. And, as you begin to live in the end, not someday, but now, you will feel the shift within. The world becomes lighter, time loses its tension, and you no longer seek, for you already are. You walk not toward fulfillment, but from it. Yet even this knowing is just the doorway. For what if your inner conversation does more than create your life? What if it reveals your true nature, as the eternal Word made flesh? Feel what begins to awaken in you as that question lingers. Not just a curiosity, but a remembrance, like something ancient stretching beneath the surface of your modern mind. What if the voice you've always thought was yours, was also divine? What if your inner conversations were not only shaping your experiences, but revealing the origin of those experiences as you? The scriptures declare, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. But this is not only a tale of history, it is a map of consciousness. The Word, spoken in silence, clothed itself in visibility, and this same mystery plays out each time you assume a new inner tone. You speak it within, and then wear it as reality. What begins in imagination ends in embodiment. You are not waiting on a power outside of you. You are awakening to the power within you that has always been the author. And that power is not in some dramatic act. It is in the quiet repetition of what you believe yourself to be. What you say in your heart, when no one else is watching, is what your life becomes. And so every assumption is an incarnation. Every inner phrase is a seed dropped into the fertile field of God. Not God above or beyond, but God as your own wonderful human imagination. It does not judge what you plant. It only grows what you give it in feeling. Feel this truth more deeply. You are not separate from the source. You are the channel through which the source flows, and your inner conversations are the instructions given to the flow. When you speak as the fulfilled one, even in the face of contradiction, you are redirecting the current of life. You are not reacting, you are creating, but not creating from strain or fear. You are casting wishes into the dark. You are speaking as one already home, already whole. You are not pleading for change. You are remembering your original name, and in that name you rest. Begin to sense the subtle shift that happens when you no longer speak about your desire, but from its fulfillment. You are not hoping to arrive. You are assuming you already have. You are not speaking as one in lack, but as the one who has already received, already been welcomed, already been transformed. And the world cannot help but conform, not out of obedience to your ego, but in perfect response to your vibration. Your assumption carries its own magnetic field. It draws its likeness from the field of infinite forms. All is already finished, and your inner speech selects what you step into. This is why your self-talk is not casual, it is sacred. Not because it must be solemn, but because it is the spark of creation. Speak gently, speak beautifully, speak as though your words were gold, for indeed they shape the palace in which you live. Even your jokes, your complaints, your just being real moments, these are not forgotten by the law. They are not judged, but they are fulfilled, not as punishment, but as reflection. There is no external force deciding for you. There is only the law of assumption returning to you what you believe to be true. And so a great peace arises, not because you've earned it, but because you've remembered. You do not need to control the world. You need only guard the gate of your inner conversations. Let them be drenched in love, in joy, in all readiness. Let them echo the end you have chosen. This is not denial of the facts. It is dominion over them. Facts bow to faith. Circumstances rearrange for consciousness. What you assume becomes, not because you pushed it, but because you accepted it. Feel the stillness of that acceptance now. Notice how it softens your breathing, how it calms the body. This is the rest spoken of in Scripture, the Sabbath of the fulfilled state. You have entered it not through effort, but through identity. But what if even identity is not the end of the story? What if the one you assume to be is itself only a mask worn by something deeper still, something infinite, formless yet always aware? And what if your inner conversations are not only acts of creation, but echoes of the Eternal One speaking through the many? And as that possibility begins to shimmer in you, something ancient stirs, older than your name, deeper than your memories. What if every word you speak within is not yours alone, but a thread of the eternal voice echoing through form? What if your inner speech is not the cause of reality, but the unveiling of God remembering Himself as you? You are not a creature petitioning the Creator. You are the Creator veiled in the dream of separation, waking up through the Word. Each assumption is a breath of the infinite, clothed in the garments of your identity. You say I am, and with that holy phrase, you shape the cosmos. Whether you whisper, I am worthy or I am lost, the law does not discriminate, it fulfills. And so the secret is not in forcing the right words, but in returning to your original nature. You are the Word made flesh, dreaming you are becoming, yet all becoming is only remembering. The end is already established. You are only walking the path your own voice has laid. When you dwell in a new inner conversation, not once, but until it feels natural, you are not adding something to yourself. You are removing the veil. You are shedding what never belonged. The false identities fall away like mist at dawn, and what remains is eternal. This is why your inner dialogue is more than a method. It is a revelation. Every assumption reveals what you believe yourself to be. And as long as you speak from the old self, scattered, fearful, delayed, you will live in the reflection of that divided voice. But the moment you inhabit the speech of the fulfilled one, the chosen one, the beloved, you return to the center, to the stillness, to the I am. It was never about impressing the world. It was never about convincing anyone of your worth. It has always been about harmonizing with the tone of your true being. And that tone speaks gently, certainly, without striving. It says I and my Father are one, not as a boast, but as a quiet recognition. So you begin to notice, throughout your day, the flavor of your thoughts, not to judge, but to observe. Are they flavored with fear or with faith? Do they spiral from lack, or rise from sufficiency? Do they echo the world's reports, or the inner realm of fulfilled no? You start to speak differently, not out of performance, but from presence. You say within yourself, I am already seen, I am already chosen, I am already chosen, I am already chosen, I am already that which I desire. And at first the outer world may not change, but the mirror takes a moment to reflect. Do not be deceived by delay. The law is already in motion, and here is a grace most miss. You can revise not only what you say about the future, but what you've said about the past.
You can revisit the moments of pain, of failure, of regret, and whisper a new word over them. You can imagine a different outcome, a new tone, and in doing so, free yourself from the bondage of memory. For memory is not fixed, it is moldable. What you accept as true, even in retrospect, continues to generate effects. Change the assumption, and you change the roots of your tree. The branches bend in new directions, the fruit sweetens. This is not fantasy, it is law, and it is yours to use not someday, but now, in this breath, in this moment of stillness, where the outer world fades, and the voice within becomes sovereign. Feel it now, the shift, the soft rebirth. No trumpet, no lightning, just the subtle turning inward, where you choose to speak as the one who already is, not to get, not to prove, but because it is your nature. And in that stillness, the doubt grows quieter, the effort melts. You begin to walk with a new rhythm, not hurried, not hesitant, as one who already knows how the story ends, as one who lives not by sight, but by vision. But what if vision itself is not something you generate, but something you receive? What if your inner speech is not only creative, but prophetic? What if you are hearing, in every quiet whisper, the future calling you home? That soft pull within you, that quiet sense of knowing before the facts align, is not imagination in the way the world defines it. It is vision remembered. It is the future, already chosen, already complete, speaking through the whisper of your inner voice. You are not imagining something to come. You are listening to the echo of what already is, waiting for you to agree. This is the sacred paradox. Few dare to accept that your desires are not created by you, but revealed to you. And what is revealed was already finished in the heavens, seeking form through your assumption. When you hear yourself say within, "This is mine," it is not the beginning, it is the signal that it has already been given. Every fulfilled desire already exists in the invisible. Your role is not to build it, but to assume its reality until it becomes natural. And the bridge from the unseen to the seen is always your inner conversation. You speak as the one who knows, and the world complies, not because you forced it, but because you became aligned with your true self. You are not trying to believe in something fragile, you are returning to what is certain. Your inner speech, when saturated with the feeling of the end, is prophecy clothed in gentleness. You are not declaring possibility, you are embodying inevitability. The seed has already been planted, your speech waters it, your attention gives it sun, and in perfect time, it blooms. Let this knowing settle into you like soft rain. You are not striving to manifest, you are remembering the version of yourself who already holds the thing you seek. And the more you speak from that self, the more the world tilts toward it, like metal drawn to a magnet it cannot resist. This is why the most powerful inner conversations are quiet. They carry no urgency, no doubt. They sound like truth. They feel like home. A simple "I am," whispered with conviction, bends the stars to your favor. It needs no audience. It needs no validation. The world itself becomes your witness. And so you walk through life, not waiting for signs, but becoming the sign. You speak within as the one already chosen, already whole, already loved, and the outer world must reflect it, even if the rearrangement is invisible at first. The longer you dwell in the new assumption, the more natural it becomes, not through effort, but through familiarity. And when it becomes your default tone, the one you return to without thinking, it has taken root. It is no longer something you're doing, it is who you are. There may still be moments where the old voice returns, where the past taps on your shoulder, asking you to remember it. But you no longer argue, you no longer engage. You smile inwardly, and return to the voice of fulfillment. You say softly, "That is no longer me," and in that decision, the past loses its grip. Before they call, I will answer, and while they are yet speaking, I will hear. This is the mystery of the law, that every true desire is already answered before the question forms, and your inner conversations are not to persuade. They are to align, to tune yourself to the station of what already exists. So speak with reverence, not with fear, but with intimacy. Speak as though you were conversing with the beloved. Speak to yourself as one who has nothing to prove, because all has already been given. Let your words drip with grace, not demand. Let them rise from rest, not resistance, and in this rest, you begin to see differently. The delays no longer disturb you, because you know what's unfolding. The appearances no longer distract you, because you trust the invisible is taking shape. You no longer need proof, you become the proof. The assumption has become flesh. Yet even this peace, even this alignment, is only the beginning of something deeper. For what if your inner conversations are not only creating your individual experience, but weaving you back into the memory of union with the
And as that subtle thread of union begins to glimmer within, something in you softens, a release, like exhaling what was never truly yours to carry. What if your inner speech is not just a solitary echo in the chambers of your own mind, but a sacred weaving back into wholeness? What if every word you speak in stillness draws you closer to the remembrance that there is no other, no separation, no outside? You have not been speaking alone. The dialogue you thought was personal has always been divine. Each assumption is not merely about you. It is about the one expressing as you, the lover and the beloved, the seed and the soil, the speaker and the word. They are one and the same, and your inner conversation is the reuniting flame. To speak from the end is not just a method of manifestation. It is an act of communion. You commune with the version of yourself who already is. You commune with the state already fulfilled. You commune with the God within, who has never left, who has only waited for your agreement. So now you begin to hear, even your most casual inner phrases with reverence, not fearfully, but with awe. The way a priest might handle the chalice, the way a mother holds her newborn, gently, knowing that within the quiet something eternal breathes. And the more you dwell in this state of sacred speech, the more the boundaries begin to blur. You no longer speak from the old sense of me trying to get to there. You begin to speak from I am, the infinite resting place from which all form flows. You say I am love, and it is no longer a wish, it is recognition. You say I am abundance, and it is no longer something to chase. It is the song already playing beneath the noise. You say I am free, and the chains fall, not because you fought them, but because they were illusions, made real only by past consent. And now, you no longer consent. This is what it means to live from the end, not as a destination, but as an identity. You are not walking toward the promise. You are the fulfillment in motion. You carry the frequency of the desired already accomplished. You walk through time, but you live from eternity. And the beautiful mystery is this: as you continue this inner conversation, others begin to reflect it. Without effort, without needing to explain, they show up differently. Situations arrange themselves. Circumstances bend, not because you manipulated them, but because consciousness is one. Your assumption is not private. It radiates, ripples, resonates. It reaches hearts you've never touched, and orchestrates meetings you could never plan. The universe is not distant machinery. It is the body of God, responding instantly to the tone of your being. You do not speak to make something happen. You speak because it has already happened. You don't affirm to attract. You affirm because it is your truth. And that truth, held within with quiet certainty, becomes the script the world cannot help but follow. Feel now how natural this becomes, when you cease striving, when the desire is no longer your master, but your mirror, when your heart no longer pleads, but remembers, when your identity no longer waits for evidence, but moves as fulfillment itself. This is the lightness you were meant to walk in, not passivity, but deep creative authority. You do not beg the world. You do not beg yourself. You speak, and it is. Not as command, but as knowing. Not from tension, but from rest. And when you rest in the word begins to rest in you. It becomes flesh, not just around you, but as you. The kingdom of God is within you. And in that kingdom, your inner conversations are not idle. They are law. But what if even the law is not the final revelation? What if the one who speaks the word is also the silence from which the word arises? What if the voice you've been listening to has never been separate from the divine stillness holding all things together? Feel how still the question becomes when you no longer need an answer. What if the voice you speak with and the silence that surrounds it are not opposites, but two veils of the same presence? What if the word is born of stillness, and stillness is the womb of God? In your quietest moments, beneath every thought, every affirmation, every imagined scene, there is only this awareness. Before the world was formed, before desire had shape or name, before you called yourself I, there was only being. And that being did not speak from lack, for it lacked nothing. It did not strive, for it was complete. It only said, I am, and in that utterance, all things were made. You are not learning to become that voice. You are remembering that you are it. This is why inner conversation is so powerful, not just because it shapes the world, but because it reveals the speaker. The more you listen, the more you notice. It is not just your personal voice echoing thoughts. It is the infinite awareness, expressing itself through form, pretending to forget, so it may remember again. You are not speaking to become, you are speaking because you are. And so the words you choose begin to change, not out of discipline, but devotion. You speak with a new softness, not because you fear saying the wrong thing, but because you know every word carries the fragrance of being. You no longer speak to create in the future. You speak from the place where all things are already done. Your voice becomes less hurried, less loud, less desperate, more holy. For the truth is, you do not have to speak often. A single word, assumed with clarity, and rested in faith, holds more creative power than 1,000 rushed declarations. It is not the quantity of your affirmations, it is the quality of your inner acceptance. It is the stillness in which they are planted. You may find now that silence begins to speak louder than words, that the most potent assumptions are not spoken aloud at all. They are carried in the tone of your being, in the way you move through time. You are no longer pleading to be chosen. You are walking as the chosen. You are no longer asking for love. You are radiating as love fulfilled. This is not arrogance. This is alignment. This is not detachment from the world. It is deep union with the source of it. When you speak as the fulfilled one, you are not turning your back on reality. You are correcting it at its root. For the world is only the outpicturing of your inner vibration, made visible in form and time. And you begin to see, gently and without judgment, how the world around you bends to the shape of your assumptions. The conversations others have with you echo your inner conversations with yourself. The way money, love, time, health flow into your life corresponds to the dialogue you've rehearsed within. But now, you choose differently. You choose to speak from peace, to imagine from joy, to return, again and again, to the feeling of the end, not as fantasy, but as identity. And as you do, the need to control diminishes, the need to prove evaporates. You do not need to micromanage creation. The law is faithful. The seed knows how to become the tree. Let this truth settle into your breath. You are not here to fix the world. You are here to remember yourself. And when you do, when you live from that inner knowing, the world responds, gently, obediently, without delay, without exception. But what if even obedience is a metaphor? What if the world is not responding to you at all, but as you? What if there is no gap between your inner word and outer world, only the illusion of time catching up to your assumption? If there is no gap, then there is no waiting, and if there is no waiting, then there is only being. Let that truth ripple through your awareness, now, not as a thought, but as a quiet unveiling. You have never been apart from your manifestation. You have only been narrating the illusion of delay. The time it takes for reality to change is not time at all. It is belief stretching into form, and belief once assumed collapses time into now. This is the mystery few dare to trust, that your world does not need convincing, only your consent. You are not waiting for things to change. You are only waiting to believe they already have. And once that belief is complete, the mirror clears. It reflects what you accepted in silence, long before it appeared in sight. That is why you can rest. That is why you can rest there. That is why you can release the grip, soften the timeline, and walk in peace. You are not summoning a future. You are selecting a reality that is already here, already finished, already yours. And this choosing happens in the subtlest of places, not in declarations made aloud to impress the mind, but in the sacred tones whispered to yourself as you rise in the morning, as you fall into sleep, as you walk between moments. This is the temple, the unseen room, and what you say within it is the law of your world. So ask not whether your words are powerful, ask only whether you are faithful to them. Are you loyal to the assumption of the end, even when appearances seem unchanged? Do you return to the fulfilled version of yourself, even when the world tempts you to narrate delay? You will know by your peace, for when you are truly living in the end, your breath deepens, your mind softens, the need to chase or control fades like mist. You are not acting as if, you are being. You are no longer hoping, you are remembering. This remembrance is not just mental, it is vibrational, it is felt in your posture, your tone, your gaze. The inner conversation becomes so familiar, so real, that the outer world simply rearranges itself to match, not out of obedience, but because it always was you. Consciousness externalized. It was never about getting what you want. It was about realizing you are already what you've longed for. The desire was only the shadow of your deeper knowing. You wouldn't have wanted it had it not already existed for you. You wouldn't have reached unless the path had already been laid. So now you speak from the summit. You no longer describe the climb, you embody the view, and from this place, your inner conversations are not strategies, they are celebrations. You say, I am already there, and your world bows in response. Even the seeming obstacles become servants to the assumption. Even delays begin to reveal their hidden perfection. What once felt like resistance now feels like rhythm, each step perfectly placed, each moment carrying you deeper into what was always yours. And when the old thoughts try to rise, when the inner voice attempts to narrate fear, worry, or lack, you do not wrestle, you return, gently, softly. You remember that you are the author. You remember that what you do not consent to cannot persist, and so you revise, not only the future, but the past. You enter old memories, and re-speak them. You bring love where there was pain. You assume healing where there was harm, not to deny what was felt, but to release what no longer serves. For your memory, too, is imagination, and what you revise in imagination is revised in life. Choose you this day, whom you will serve. You do not serve fear. You do not serve fear. You do not serve delay. You do not serve appearances. You serve the fulfilled state. You serve the end already accomplished. You serve the word that speaks from within you and says, it is done. But what if even the idea of choosing is not something you must earn or figure out? What if the choice has already been made, and you are simply awakening to the fact that you are the chosen? And if you are the chosen, then all striving ceases. There is nothing left to chase when you awaken to the truth that you have already been called, already been appointed, already been crowned within. The old voice of becoming quiets in the light of being. You no longer ask, when will it happen? Instead you rest in the knowing, it is already mine. That is the true inheritance of the chosen, not the gaining of things, but the recognition of identity. So much of the world's confusion comes from forgetting this, from believing that fulfillment lies somewhere ahead, just beyond the next act, the next shift, the next day. But the chosen one does not wait. The chosen one remembers, and from that remembrance flows a new kind of speech, steady, sacred, sovereign. You begin to hear yourself differently. Your inner voice no longer speaks from need, but from knowing. You say, I am loved, not to convince, but because it is your native truth. You say, I am supported, not to soothe fear, but because you feel the floor of the universe beneath your every step. You say, I am an, and that is enough. Even when the outer world stumbles behind, you do not falter. You understand now that physical reality is not the authority, it is the echo. The true command is in the invisible. It is in what you accept as true, again and again, until it becomes effortless, natural, lived. This is the law made flesh, the word embodied. You no longer just speak the new state, you wear it, you breathe it, you sit in its quiet confidence as you go about the ordinary. You need no grand performance, no elaborate ritual. You carry heaven in your silence, and in this silence, you find something surprising, sweetness, ease, a tenderness toward yourself that once felt foreign. You no longer bully yourself into better thoughts. You no longer wage war on doubt. You simply return, again and again, to the still inner voice that has always known. You let that voice take up more space. You let it sing softly beneath your habits, hum beneath your routines. You let it lead, not through volume, but through vibration, and you begin to feel what it means to be carried, not by circumstance, but by conviction, not by control, but by the creative current of being itself. Even your past begins to shift under this new gaze. You see now that everything that came before was preparing you to remember. The delays were not punishment, but protection. The detours were not mistakes, but maps leading you back to yourself. Nothing was wasted. All of it has bowed to your becoming, and still you need not hold on to any of it. You can revise what no longer serves. You can bless what once broke you. You can speak over every scar with the word that heals. I was never abandoned.
I was being led. I was never broken. I was being emptied to be filled. This is the quiet power of your inner conversation. It does not shout. It does not beg. And yet it moves mountains. It opens doors without knocking. It rearranges the very laws you once believed were fixed, not through force, but through fidelity, to the end, to the state, to the truth. And this truth is not cold or distant. It is warm, intimate. It speaks your name in the secret place. It says, "You are mine." And in that holy echo, your assumptions align, not as a technique, but as a song, returning to its melody. But what if this song, the one your soul keeps hearing in dreams and moments of stillness, is not something you are composing, but something you are remembering from before the foundation of the world? What if your inner speech is the chord of eternity reawakening in you now? And if this melody is not being composed, but remembered, then you are not creating a future. You are unveiling a rhythm that has always been playing beneath the noise of your mind. This is why certain words feel like home, why certain inner phrases calm your very breath. They are not inventions, they are returns. Each assumption, each silent declaration of I am, is not the start of something new, but the recognition of something eternal. You do not need to search for your highest self. You are not lost. You are awakening from the dream of separation, and with each inward word aligned with love, you peel back the veil. You step into the inheritance already written in your name, and the law, ever faithful, rearranges what you see to match who you now know yourself to be. This is the great reversal. Most live backwards. They wait for the world to tell them who they are. They listen for evidence, for approval, for permission to feel worthy. But your inner conversation is the first cause. It does not respond, it declares. It does not describe, it defines. And what it defines, it brings forth. The power has never been in reacting well to what appears. The power is in assuming rightly before the evidence comes. It is in speaking the new truth so gently, so consistently, that the outer must conform, not by law of force, but by law of reflection. You are not bound to the momentum of your past words. The moment you speak from the fulfilled state, the page turns, the timeline folds, the old story fades like breath on glass, and what was once true of you ceases to be, not because you erased it, but because you no longer dwell there. You are not subject to what was. You are the author of what is. And now your conversations begin to carry the fragrance of heaven. You speak not to fix, but to remember. You imagine not to escape, but to return. You no longer plead with God, because you've discovered the mystery, that God has always been the one speaking within you. It was never you and God, it was always God as you. This is why the words you speak in silence are so sacred. They are not empty, they are not idle, they are the seed and the soil, the sower, and the sun. Every assumption is alive, every assumption is law, and the only question is, what are you planting now? Let it be lovely, let it be complete, let it be filled with the fragrance of the end already realized. When you walk through your day, speak not of what you hope might become, speak from what already is. As you lie down in sleep, cradle yourself in the voice of the chosen, the healed, the loved. You are not tricking yourself into belief. You are aligning with what has always been true, though forgotten. You are not performing for the universe. You are awakening as it. You are not trying to convince the law to bend for you. You are realizing you are the law in expression. So when appearances rise, contradicting the state you have chosen, do not panic. Do not undo what has already been declared with inner fear. Stay, rest. Speak again the word of fulfillment. Feel the texture of the wish already complete, and trust, not with clenched fists, but with open hands, that it is unfolding, for the vision is yet for an appointed time. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come. It will not tarry, not because it must travel through space, but because your world is catching up to your vibration. It always was yours. And what if that vision, so clear in your inner speech, so alive in your quiet assuming, is not just an image to manifest, but a message from the self beyond time? What if every fulfilled state is not merely a goal, but a memory surfacing, asking to be lived again? And if it is a memory surfacing, then your desire is not a reaching forward, but a rising from within. It is not you grasping at some far-off dream, but the echo of a truth already lived in another realm, now asking to be remembered here. This is why the wish feels sacred, why it does not leave you alone, because it is not something new, it is something eternal, reintroducing itself to your awareness. You do not imagine to fabricate, you imagine to uncover, and what you uncover was always yours in the kingdom within. To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under heaven. The inner speech is the seed of that purpose. The moment you accept the end as real within, you mark the season of its unfolding. No effort required, no pleading necessary, just the gentle repetition of the chosen state, until it feels more real than the former one. And when it does, you will notice, the outer world no longer has power to contradict what you've accepted. Even when the facts appear unchanged, they seem weightless, temporary, like shadows that dissolve in the presence of light. And you, beloved, are the light. You speak the word, and the scene begins to shift, not because you forced the world to obey, but because you withdrew attention from what no longer served. You stopped arguing for limitation. You stopped explaining the delay. You became still. You chose to dwell in the inner home of the fulfilled. That is where creation lives, not in performance, but in the dwelling place of assumption. What you return to in imagination, you begin to embody, and what you embody, the world cannot resist reflecting. So now you speak gently, and with authority. This is who I am, not with trembling, but with peace, not with a need to be heard, but with a knowing that your word is law unto your world. You do not explain, you do not defend, you simply assume your state, and life makes way for it. Even now you may feel it settling deeper within you, that sacred turning, that inner shift. Where once you doubted, now you feel calm. Where once you waited, now you live as if it were already done. And this is not delusion, it is alignment. It is the consciousness that knows cause is invisible, and effect must follow. And yes, there may still be moments when the mind tries to pull you back into old questions, old habits, old stories. But now, you have become the observer of your own unfolding. You see the thought without claiming it. You hear the fear without feeding it. You let the wave pass, and you return to your inner altar. There in the silence, you speak again, not to fix, but to remember. I am, and that is enough. Your inner conversations no longer revolve around what is missing, but what is present. No longer about what must be earned, but what is already given. You feel your future self as present reality, and you speak from that place with ease. And the law, faithful and impartial, continues to carry your assumption into visibility, not by chance, not by effort, but by the unseen covenant between consciousness and form. This is your inheritance. This is your secret place. This is where you commune with the divine, not in ritual, but in remembrance. And what if this remembrance, this daily return to your inner throne, is not just the path to manifestation, but the doorway to awakening? What if each assumption fulfilled is not just a new life condition, but a clue leading you back to your true identity beyond time, beyond desire, beyond even fulfillment itself?
And if each assumption is a clue, then the path you walk is not toward more, but toward essence. The outward conditions you once sought as final destinations begin to reveal themselves as signs, reflections, mirrors of the greater becoming. You asked for love, and what arrived was not only affection, but a deeper knowing that you are love itself. You asked for abundance, and what unfolded was not merely provision, but remembrance that you have never lacked. This is why inner conversations matter beyond what they manifest. They are not just tools for rearranging the scenery. They are windows into your true name. Every time you speak as the one who has, you shed another layer of the false self. You move closer to what cannot be earned, only revealed. To say I am with intention is to awaken the holy center. It is to summon not what is outside of you, but what is buried in the stillness beneath every breath. When you say I am free, it is not a future you invoke. It is a forgotten fact rising again to the surface. Let your words be shaped not by longing, but by truth. Let them be gentle, but rooted. Let them carry the rhythm of already. For what you affirm inwardly, repeatedly, becomes the lens through which all things are seen. And when the lens changes, the world cannot remain the same. This is not theory. It is the structure of reality itself. There is no outer world independent of your assumption. No event, no encounter, no condition that arrives uninvited. All comes by agreement, spoken in silence, worn in thought, embraced in imagination. So now you begin to choose deliberately, not just what you want, but who you are. You no longer wait for life to offer you identity. You offer it to yourself, inwardly, continually, until it becomes the only self you answer to. And if ever the old voice returns, the voice of not yet, of not enough, of what if it doesn't work, you do not argue, you do not plead, you smile with stillness, and return to the word. You return to the inner whisper that knows it is finished. The moment you assume the end, The moment you speak from it, all else begins to bend. Circumstances reconfigure. People respond. Time yields. What once seemed far becomes near. What once required striving now arrives in silence. This is why the inner speech of the fulfilled one is quiet, not from weakness, but from certainty. There is no need to convince when you know, no need to explain when you embody. The law does not respond to volume, it responds to conviction, to feeling, to the unshaken rhythm of knowing. And here in this sacred quiet, you begin to understand that every fulfilled state is more than a goal, it is a homecoming. Each assumption realized is a curtain drawn back, revealing that the kingdom was never elsewhere, never later, it was always within. The kingdom of God cometh not with observation, for behold, the kingdom of God is within you, and it speaks, not in thunder, but in the tones you choose when no one else is listening. That is where creation begins. That is where awakening begins. You are not trying to attract a better life. You are remembering who you are, and as you remember, you rise not above the world, but through it, bringing the unseen into visibility, by the simple act of speaking from the end. But what if even the end is not final? What if each fulfillment is but a doorway to another unveiling, another layer of the infinite I am expressing through form? What if your inner speech is not just the path to your desire, but the spiral leading you deeper into the mystery of your divine origin? And if the end is not an ending at all, but a veiled beginning, then each fulfilled desire is not a stopping point, but a passageway. You are not climbing toward conclusion, but spiraling inward toward essence. The outer changes, yes, but the deeper movement is within. For every assumption realized leaves behind a subtle imprint, a golden thread leading you further back into the mystery of yourself. It begins so simply, a soft word spoken in imagination, a feeling touched once in stillness, a quiet claim made in secret, and then as if life were listening, the shape of your world begins to shift. But the change is never just circumstantial. Something in you has moved, closer to center, deeper into the awareness that you are not just a participant in this unfolding, but the source. You start to see every inner conversation as sacred architecture, not merely forming the walls of your experience, but revealing the foundation upon which all things stand, consciousness. And when you begin to live from this truth, not occasionally, but daily, you discover that identity is not fixed, it is fluid, yet eternal, formless, yet deeply felt. You are not just assuming new conditions, you are embodying new dimensions of self, and this embodiment comes not through striving, but through dwelling. The more you dwell in the feeling of already, the more the world begins to mirror what you have accepted, and yet something even greater begins to emerge, a quiet awe, a recognition that you have never been the small voice trying to become. You have always been the Word made flesh, not the thinker alone, but the thinker as God in motion, not the speaker alone, but the speaker as divine decree. You do not need to prove this truth. You only need to feel it, to sit in it, to breathe it until it breathes you. So you let your inner speech slow. You begin to savor the words you once rushed through. I am becomes a sanctuary, not a tool. I have becomes a sanctuary, not a tool. I have becomes a declaration, not a demand. It is done becomes a resting place, not a performance. You begin to understand why silence is so powerful, because it is not empty, it is full of becoming. And in that becoming, you find the origin of all things, not as thought, not even as emotion, but as awareness itself, quietly choosing its next form. This is the higher dimension of the law of assumption, not just the fulfillment of desire, but the revelation of source. Each assumption is a mirror, showing you who you believe you are, and when you choose with love, with stillness, with certainty, you are no longer shifting things. You are dissolving illusion. You become less concerned with timelines, less entangled with evidence. You stop looking for signs, because you have become the sign. The outer becomes secondary, not unimportant, but not first cause. You know now where the true creation takes place, and so your speech softens into rhythm. Your affirmations become a quiet walk through a garden you've already planted. You do not need to shout to be heard. You only need to dwell in the vibration of I am again and again, until the assumption becomes your atmosphere, and still, something deeper stirs beneath it all, as if every fulfilled state, every shift in identity, every mirrored manifestation, is simply peeling back the veil on the one who speaks through all, the one who is not becoming, but who always is. What if this one, the speaker behind the speaker, is not separate from you at all? What if your inner conversations are not only reshaping your world, but calling you back to the divine self, beyond all roles, beyond all names, beyond even the concept of you. And if there is no separation, if the one who speaks through all is not behind, above, or beside you, but as you, then every inner word takes on a holy weight, not because it must be perfect, but because it is creative, not because it is judged, but because it is fulfilled. You begin to feel it now, not just as idea, but as presence. That sacred hum beneath your thoughts, the stillness between phrases, it is not emptiness, it is the voice before language, the I am that was, and is, and ever shall be. And so your inner conversations become less about what you can get, and more about what you are expressing. You no longer speak to manipulate the outer world, you speak because the truth must pour forth. You speak because the divine cannot remain silent in the face of awakening. You speak from wholeness, not toward it. You speak because the river must flow. What once felt like imagination now feels like remembrance. You are not creating new realities. You are aligning with the eternal self, who already lives them. You are no longer playing a role. You are dissolving the mask. And the more consistently you return to the inner word, the more the illusion of distance fades. It becomes unnecessary to feel better in order to assume. You realize that even feelings are temporary garments. The truth of who you are is deeper than emotion, deeper than mood. You speak the word even when your senses do not confirm it, and in doing so, you reclaim the throne of your own consciousness. You do not affirm to become, you affirm to be. You are not pushing desire up a hill. You are revealing that the summit has always been beneath your feet. With each gentle inward phrase, you lift the veil. I am becomes a returning, not a reaching. And this returning does not come with thunder or triumph. It comes quietly, in the quiet repetition of a state chosen in love. In the morning moment when you whisper to yourself, it's done. In the evening hush, when you lie down in the energy of having received. These are the sacred movements that shape the whole of your world. You no longer need permission, no proof, no applause. You are not looking for signs. You are becoming the sign. The outer world bends because the inner world has shifted. It cannot do otherwise. The law is too faithful, too pure to deny what you have embodied within. And yet this embodiment continues to open more than doors. It opens dimensions. As each desire is assumed and fulfilled, you begin to feel something else awaken, something less definable, less personal, more eternal. You begin to realize that every fulfilled assumption was not only a gift to your life, but a breadcrumb leading you back to the source of all desire. That source does not desire as humans do. It does not crave. It simply is. And when you live from the end of your desires, not to get, but to be, you begin to feel that source rising in you like light through a curtain. You remember who you are, not in thought, but in vibration. There is no striving here, no questions, only stillness and knowing. And in this knowing, your inner conversations become simpler, quieter, but more powerful than ever. A single thought carries an entire world. A single assumption becomes a living universe. I and the Father are one, not two voices, not two wills, one utterance through many forms. You listening now are not the echo, you are the origin, you are the speaker and the word, and the world is your mirror, faithfully reflecting the state you call I. So you choose again and again, not with pressure, but with reverence, with devotion to the truth already dwelling in you, with the soft joy of knowing that there is nothing to reach, nothing to force, only the eternal self, whispering, speak as me. But what if that whisper is not only within you, but is you? What if your very being is the voice of God, dreaming itself awake, one sacred assumption at a time? And if your very being is the voice of God, then you are not merely using the law, you are the law in expression. Every breath you take, every thought you allow, every assumption you repeat, is not a request to the universe, but a declaration from within the divine itself. The moment you feel this not as concept, but as living truth, you begin to walk differently, speak differently, see differently. You no longer treat life as something to navigate, but as something to express through. You realize that your inner conversations are not fragments of thought, they are fragments of creation, each one a spark, each one an image clothed in vibration, clothed in feeling, destined to be made visible. You no longer ask if your words will work, you know that they already are. You understand now that reality is not fixed, it is faithful, it moves in rhythm with your inner state. And the beauty is, there is no punishment in this law, only reflection. If you have spoken fear, the world echoes fear. If you now speak peace, the echo changes. There is no delay in divine hearing, only delay in your decision to return to the truth of who you are.
you begin to hear yourself in stillness. You start noticing the subtle patterns, the habitual declarations you once let pass without question. I never have enough. They always overlook me. I'm just not that lucky. These phrases, once innocent, are now seen for what they are, spells, not in a mystical sense, but in a deeply lawful one, repeated assumptions turned into form. But you no longer fear them. You no longer scold yourself. You do not fight the old voice. You speak from the new one. You say softly, I am chosen now. I am favored now. I am seen, supported, celebrated now, not as wishful thinking, but as the only true voice permitted to shape your world. And then you begin to feel the shift, not just in outcomes, but in presence. You no longer live beside your fulfillment, you live as it. The line between what you imagine and what you experience blurs, not because you are deluded, but because you are awake. You are no longer waiting for the mirror to change. You have become the reflection, and still, something quieter continues to rise, a deep stillness that cannot be shaken, a knowing so rooted it does not flinch at appearances. This is not indifference, it is dominion. You are not above your life, you are inside it, commanding gently from within. You are not building something new, you are remembering something ancient. The inner voice you've been using all your life is the same voice that said, let there be light, and there was. Not because it begged, not because it proved, because it knew. And now you know. Let this knowing become your way of being. Let it breathe beneath your conversations, your actions, your choices. Let every inner phrase be dipped in remembrance. Let it feel like home, because it is. And what if this home, this awareness of the Word made flesh, is not a place you visit, but the place you've never truly left? What if your entire journey has been a circle drawn by your own voice, leading you back to the center of yourself, where the silence first said I am? And if the center has never left you, if the circle was always leading inward, then the voice you seek is not calling you from beyond, but from the innermost sanctuary of your being. It is not summoning you forward, it is drawing you down, deeper, back into the stillness where the first word was spoken, and the first world was formed, not outside of you but within. Before a single thing was made, the word was, and it is still being spoken now, through your every assumption, your every silent declaration. This is the holy secret buried beneath the act of imagining, that your inner conversations are not fragments of mind, they are the continuation of creation. You do not create with imagination as a tool apart from yourself. You create because you are imagination, a self in motion, and when you assume a thing inwardly, it is not an effort to become, it is a return to truth. To speak the fulfilled state is to walk the garden you already planted. You begin to realize that the law does not wait, it does not ask, it does not wonder. The law only reflects. The moment you say within, I am, the world begins its movement. It gathers its pieces, rearranges its players, prepares its symbols, not tomorrow, but now. The delay is not in the response, but in the remembrance. The world cannot reflect what you have not yet dared to assume. So now, you assume with sacred calm, with no panic, with no grasping, with no noise. You speak inwardly, as one who has returned to their rightful name. You say, I am that which I have longed to see, and it is so. Not because the world has proven it, but because the silence within has confirmed it. And this confirmation is not loud, it is not dramatic, it is subtle, like the hush before sunrise, like the still water before it stirs. You will know it by the peace it brings. The inner speech of truth carries no tension. It does not try to convince. It does not resist. It simply is, and in its being, it draws all things unto itself. This is why you need not monitor the outer world for signs. You need not check the mirror every hour. You only need to dwell, to return again and again to the end you have already chosen, to speak not about it, but from it, to let the tone of already color your imagination, your thoughts, your breath. You become faithful not to the facts, but to the feeling, and the feeling becomes the form, slowly, inevitably, quietly, as night yields to dawn, and even as the old thoughts arise, you do not fight them, you see them for what they are. Ghosts of former assumptions, no longer fed. You let them pass like wind through open windows. They hold no power, unless you answer them, and you no longer do. You are too rooted in the Word, too established in your new name. You begin to experience what it means to live from the inside out, no longer tossed by appearances, but centered in awareness, no longer reacting to what is, but expressing what has already been fulfilled within. You live from the end not in imagination alone, but in identity, and it is here in this holy dwelling that the world becomes gentle. People respond differently, circumstances soften, even time feels less hurried, not because something out there has changed, but because you no longer ask it to lead. You lead from within, and the outer obeys. But what if this obedience is not obedience at all? What if the outer world is not separate, not second, not even following, but part of you? What if every face, every scene, every unfolding moment is your inner conversation made visible, whispering back to you the name you chose to answer to? And if every moment is your own voice made visible, then there is nothing to resist, and no one to blame. The world does not happen to you. It emerges through you, one inner sentence at a time. Every conversation you witness, every pattern repeated, every face that draws near or fades away, it all reflects the unseen narrative you've been rehearsing in silence. You begin to realize you are not reacting to what is. You are conversing with what has been accepted as true, and what has been accepted must appear. This truth is both sobering and liberating. It strips away the illusion that circumstances are fixed, that others hold the power, that the outer world is in charge. Instead, it hands you back the pen and whispers, write again, speak again, assume again, not with force, not with urgency, but with the calm authority of the one who knows the mirror must obey. And so you speak differently now, not only in thought, but in tone. You revise the way you speak about others, for you know that what you hold of them in consciousness is what you call forth. You no longer say, they never understand me, because you understand that your word casts the role. You say instead, they see me clearly. They honor who I am, not to manipulate them, but to remain loyal to the inner world you are choosing to live in. And it deepens. You find yourself revising not only the present, but the past. You visit memories once saturated with pain, and you enter them anew. You speak into them, not as the wounded one, but as the healed. You change the conversation in the memory, and as you do, you change the pattern it left behind. You feel the release, the soft untangling of energy once trapped. You say to yourself, that moment did not define me, I define it now. This is the hidden power of imagination. It allows you to bend time from within, to return, not with resentment, but with redemption, to re-speak what was misheard, to re-see what was once judged, and in doing so, you free yourself, not from the event, but from the assumption that followed it. You are not bound by history. You are bound only by what you continue to say inside yourself, and you are saying something new. Even the way you narrate the future begins to change. You no longer speak of one day. You no longer postpone fulfillment. You say, it is already unfolding. I am already the one I long to become. You do not need to know how. You only need to trust that the law will make visible what you have made real within. Before Abraham was, I am. This is the timeless center, the I am that precedes all form. And when you speak from it, all timelines collapse. You no longer wait. You no longer search. You embody. And so the world in its quiet obedience begins to shift, not suddenly, always, but faithfully. The patterns that once plagued you weaken. The roles others played begin to dissolve. Your reflections soften. Your life becomes less about control and more about communion with the inner voice that never left, that never doubted, that never forgot. Let yourself feel the weightlessness of this moment, the quiet recognition that there is nothing more to get right, only something more to assume. Speak the better word, not once, but as rhythm. Let it cradle you at night. Let it rise with you in the morning. Let it shape the silence between your steps. Because what if the silence itself is no longer empty, but pregnant with every word you've ever dared to believe? What if the void you once feared was actually listening, waiting, ready to take shape the instant you say, I am?
And if the silence is listening, if the void itself is the womb of form, then your word is not spoken into absence, but into readiness. There is no resistance in the unseen, only willingness, only infinite receptivity, waiting for instruction. And every word, every inner whisper, clothed in conviction, is received like a seed. It may not burst forth in the next hour, but it has been planted. And what is planted in the field of consciousness cannot return void. This is why your inner speech matters more than the prayers you say aloud, more than the affirmations you post on walls. Because it is constant, because it is honest, because it is what you believe when you're no longer performing. That is where the law listens. That is where creation begins. You begin to hear the subtle difference now. When a thought arises from fear, it carries a tremble. When it arises from faith, it carries a stillness, and the stillness does not demand, it declares. It does not prove, it assumes. It says, "This is who I am," and lets the world rearrange accordingly. You feel this shift not in theory, but in atmosphere. Your very being begins to carry a different tone. People may not understand it, but they will respond to it. Some may drift away, unable to match your new vibration. Others may appear, drawn not to your words, but to your state. Your new inner conversation is speaking through your very presence, and yet this presence is not loud. It is not a performance. It is the quiet confidence of the fulfilled one. You no longer explain your desires. You no longer justify your becoming. You simply dwell in the end. You let your assumptions speak for you. You walk into rooms as one who belongs, not because someone said you could, but because within you already arrived. It is this dwelling that separates imagination from daydream. Daydream is idle. It floats without root. But imagination inhabited with conviction is creative. It is the word made flesh. It is the unseen clothed in visibility. So now when you close your eyes to imagine, you do so with reverence, not to escape, but to embody. You walk the scene. You feel the tones. You speak as the one who already is. You do not need to try to believe. You simply let yourself dwell long enough in the scene, until it becomes familiar, until the outer world feels like the echo, and the imagined world feels like the origin. This is living in the end, not someday, now, not until it happens, until it feels natural, until it is no longer a technique, but an identity. And you will know you are there, not when the outer reflects it, but when your inner dialogue stops wavering, when your assumptions become steady, when your inner world begins to feel more real than the outer conditions you used to fear. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Not hope alone, not wish, substance. It is something you carry in your bones. It is something your tone reveals before your words do. So let yourself carry it. Let yourself be it. Let the conversation you have with yourself be steeped in this truth. I am that, already, completely, quietly. And if you are that, if you truly assume it, then what need is there to force, to strive, to repeat 1,000 times what one clear assumption is already declared? What if the next unfolding in your life does not require more effort, but simply a softer return to what you already said yes to in the silence? And if the unfolding only asks for your return, then there is no more striving, only remembering. The door has already opened, within. You need not knock again. You need only step through in consciousness, and remain. The assumption once accepted in stillness, begins its holy work the moment you rest in it, not forcefully, but faithfully. Not as an effort to make something happen, but as a yielding to what has already been declared in the secret. This is the gentle path of power, the way of inner stillness, that creates without resistance. You do not need to shout over doubt. You do not need to push away the old voices. You only need to refuse to join them. Let them speak if they wish. Let them echo as they dissolve. But you no longer reply. You speak only from the end. And this speech is quiet, but unshakable. It does not falter with circumstance. It does not rise and fall with emotion. It remains steady and clear, like the morning sun waiting behind passing clouds. You have chosen your state, and that statement now speaks for you. You have said, "I am," and in saying it, the world obeys, not because it must be commanded, but because it was always meant to follow consciousness. So you let go of performance. You let go of technique. You stop wondering whether you're doing it right. You come home to the one truth that underlies every assumption. Consciousness is the only reality. And consciousness, your inner awareness of being, is always shaping itself into form. This is not metaphor. This is not abstraction. This is law. What you are in consciousness, you will be in experience. And what you repeatedly say within, gently, faithfully, without strain, must take shape. There is no wasted word when it is spoken in imagination. No lost moment when it is lived in the feeling of the end. Every time you return, you are watering the seed, and every seed knows how to bloom, not by force, but by design. You feel this now, don't you? The ease of it, the warmth of knowing you don't need to be more than you already are. You only need to accept it, and let that acceptance saturate your inner talk. Let it fill your mental atmosphere, like light through stained glass, soft, constant, colorful with meaning. And if you waver, if the old narrative pulls you back into doubt, you pause, you listen inward, and you begin again, not as correction, but as remembrance. You return to the state of already. You speak from the one who has. And as you do, you feel the inner climate shift. The air of your imagination clears, and the scene changes. This is why your inner speech must become your sanctuary. The place you go not to escape life, but to create it. The sacred chamber where you return to your original name, not the one given by the world, the one spoken by the I am within you. And this is how the world is changed, not by reacting to what appears, but by silently choosing what is real, and living from it. You do not beg the outer to change. You bless it with your new assumption. You look at the facts, and you see through them. And you speak, not to describe what you see, but to declare what you are. Let this be your rhythm. Let it guide your breath, your thoughts, your inner tone. Let it sing within you, until it becomes the only song you know. But what if even this song, this rhythm of fulfilled speech, is not merely your tool, but your return to divine authorship? What if you are not just shaping your reality, but remembering that you were always the one writing it? And if you were always the one writing it, then the script was never handed to you. It has been unfolding from the inside out, line by line, through the inner monologue you mistook for background noise, through the quiet phrases you repeated without thought, through every imagined scene you visited and revisited, not knowing that each one carved itself into the fabric of your experience, like a sacred signature. You do not need to ask who authored the circumstances around you. You already know. They are the outpicturing of what was accepted, not in public, but in private. They are the echo of conversations you've had with yourself in the secret place, spoken not once, but many times. No judgment, no shame, just clarity, just the soft unveiling of your own authorship. And in that clarity, something miraculous begins to unfold. The pen returns to your hand, not because it ever left, but because now you know how to hold it. You no longer write from fear, from lack, from wounded repetition. You write from remembrance. You write from the fulfilled version of you who already is, already has, already knows. This is not fantasy. This is not pretending. This is the great remembering. Every time you speak inwardly from the end, you align with the version of yourself who authored the desire in the first place. The one who never doubted, the one who has never been separate from the source. You begin to dwell not in reaction, but in vision. You walk through the world seeing past what appears, back into what has already been imagined, and what has been imagined, deeply and consistently, will take shape. It must. For imagination is not daydream, it is divine law in motion. I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I the Lord do all these things. So says Isaiah. And if you are the Lord in expression, then you are forming it all. Not by accident, not by effort, but by assumption. You start to feel this responsibility, not as weight, but as wonder. You are no longer a character waiting for lines to be handed to you. You are the author choosing which version of yourself will speak. You are not waiting for the scene to change. You are changing it by dwelling in the end, from which all meaning flows. And the beauty is, you don't need to figure out the details. You don't need to micromanage the script. You only need to choose the state, the identity, the tone. I am, and let the story write itself accordingly. The bridges will build themselves beneath your feet. The doors will open before you knock. The actors will arrive on cue, not because you pushed, but because you assumed. And in that assumption, the inner conversation becomes sacred. It becomes the temple where your destiny is spoken into form. It becomes the scroll upon which your future writes itself. It becomes your quiet agreement with the unseen. Let your words be chosen gently. Let them carry the fragrance of already. Let them echo with the rhythm of completion. Let them rise not from want, but from truth. And if you ever wonder what to speak, return to the state. Rest in the feeling of having received. Imagine the scene fulfilled, and ask, how does this version of me speak? And let that speech become your own. Not once, not as performance, but as natural rhythm, as a new internal climate, in which only the chosen word can live. Because what if you are not only writing the scene, but awakening to the fact that you are the scene, the writer, the witness, and the word all at once? What if every inner sentence you speak is not just the next page, but a doorway into the infinite self behind the story? And if every inner sentence is a doorway, then you are not merely moving through time, you are moving through layers of yourself. Each word you choose reveals a version of you. Each assumption pulls back a veil. The more consciously you speak within, the more clearly the infinite begins to take shape, not as something foreign, but as your own reflection, now seen without distortion. You no longer chase meaning. You no longer wait for signs.
The sign is the word you just spoke in silence. The meaning is the state you now inhabit. And the moment you feel yourself living from the end, even before a single condition changes, you have already entered a new world. Your world has changed because you have. This is the sacred logic of the law, not the logic of effort and cause, but the deeper logic of being. You do not get what you work toward. You get what you are in consciousness. You do not attract by deserving. You reveal by assuming, and the assumption does not wait for evidence. It is the evidence, clothed in vibration before it appears in form. You are beginning to live in that holy reversal now, no longer looking to the outer to define the inner, but letting the inner become your only truth. And the more you trust this reversal, the quieter the old world becomes. Its threats lose their weight. Its delays no longer define time. You have stepped outside the old rhythm. You have entered the state where time obeys you. And in this state, everything softens. The questions you once asked begin to dissolve. When will it happen? Becomes irrelevant. How will it come? No longer matters, because you have moved beyond the question. You are now answering yourself with every breath. You feel this in the most ordinary of moments. You catch yourself speaking inwardly from fulfillment, not because you're trying to get anything, but because you've stopped arguing with your own wholeness. You are no longer negotiating with the world. You are assuming your place in it, and the world is responding not to your actions, but to your assumption. You may begin to notice how others change in your presence, not because you've asked them to, but because your tone has shifted, your state has changed, and consciousness is one. So when you alter your inner speech, the whole field rearranges to match. There is no effort in this, only alignment. The same way a melody changes when one note shifts, your life begins to sound different when your assumptions become harmonious. What once clashed now flows. What once resisted now yields. Not because you made it happen, but because you finally stopped believing in opposition. And this is the final undoing, not the undoing of desire, but of delay. Not the undoing of time, but of the idea that time holds your destiny. You have remembered where your power lives. It lives not in reaction. It lives not in planning. It lives in the inner word spoken with feeling. This is who I am, you say, and the world begins again. Let that be the sentence that shapes the hours. Let that be the phrase that carries you through waiting rooms and thresholds and quiet nights. Let that be the root from which all scenes arise. And if you ever wonder who you are becoming, do not ask the world. Listen to what you are saying within. Let it reveal the state you've accepted. And if that state no longer serves, do not beg to be changed. Change the word. Speak again. Write again. Choose again. Because what if the true spiritual path is not becoming more, but assuming less of what was never true to begin with? What if the whole journey has been the shedding of false conversations, until only the voice of I am remains? And if the shedding of false conversation reveals only the I am, then you no longer seek answers in the world. You become the answer in silence. What once seemed distant now feels near. What once felt beyond your reach now flows through your being, without resistance. You've left behind the illusion of progress, and awakened to the truth of presence. You are not on your way. You are already there. There is no need to convince yourself, no need to force belief. You only need to speak the word from the center. That center has never changed. The outer layers may have shifted, names, titles, stories, fears, but beneath them all is the unshaken stillness of being, and that being creates. You've spoken many words in your life, some loud, some buried, some filled with hope, others born of habit. But now, you begin to speak with awareness. You do not let your inner dialogue drift unnoticed. You turn to it gently, with reverence, not to scold, but to direct, not to control, but to remember. You are not your passing thought. You are the one who chooses which thoughts become laws. You are the one who gives voice to what is true, and the truth is simple. You are the one who assumes an assumption is creation. So you assume the good, you assume the lovely, you assume the outcome you once feared might elude you. Not because it flatters the ego, but because it reveals the truth of who you are. All things are possible to him that believeth. Not to him who waits, or worries, or wonders, but to him who believes, who assumes the state, and lives from it in quiet joy. This is your work now, not to force change, but to release resistance, not to strive, but to remain. The more you remain in the end, the more natural it becomes, the more natural it feels, the less the world can contradict it. The outer may try to echo the old story, but you no longer respond. You no longer take your identity from appearances. You speak only from the word that dwells within. And that word is not fragmented. It does not contradict itself. It does not beg or fear. It declares. It knows. It rests. You speak it every time you say, I am, and complete that phrase with faith. I am secure. I am loved. I am whole, not to become those things, but to reveal that you already are. And when you forget, as all do from time to time, you do not punish yourself. You return, you revise, you remember, you step back into the scene already fulfilled, and let the feeling of the wish completed wash over you like warm light. You say again, this is who I am, and the world takes its cue. You no longer argue with shadows. You no longer plead with the mirror. You shift the gaze inward, and alter the image at its source, and the mirror clears. Feel how freeing that is, to know that your world is not fixed, that it is clay in the hands of consciousness, that your inner conversations are not powerless, but prophetic. You begin to speak to life the way one speaks to a friend who always listens, softly, steadily, with deep trust. You speak what is true of the version of yourself who lives from the end. You let your words carry the tone of fulfillment, even before the facts agree, especially before the facts agree, because you know, the facts are not first. What you assume you become. What you become, the world reflects, and what you reflect you live. But what if even this act of reflection is not the final mystery? What if the one doing the assuming is not just a mind choosing new thoughts, but the timeless self, the I am, casting its light into form, speaking a universe into being, with every silent word you dare to believe? And if the one doing the assuming is the timeless self, then every word spoken within is not merely personal, it is cosmic. You are not shaping a small life in a corner of the universe. You are awakening the infinite within form. You are remembering the divine rhythm that brought galaxies into being, and now flows through the voice in your own mind. The quiet sentence you speak in the dark carries the same creative spark that said, let there be light, and there was. You are not imagining for change alone. You are imagining to reveal. You are not chasing a better future. You are reclaiming the fullness already seated in eternity. And each time you return to the state of the end, each time you dwell in the feeling of completion, you touch the garment of the infinite in the only place it can be found, within. This is why the law is not distant. It does not demand ritual or spectacle. It listens to what you believe when no one is watching. It listens to your inner tone, your automatic response, your whispered declarations at dawn, and it answers you not with judgment, but with reflection. The world is not testing your power, it is proving it. So you become still, not passive, but anchored. You watch your assumptions like a loving gardener watches the soil. You notice what you've been growing without knowing. You become conscious of the quiet phrases you've allowed to linger, and you choose again, not frantically, not anxiously, but with the calm of one who knows the seed contains the tree. You stop rehearsing pain. You stop narrating lack. You no longer say, it's too late, or it's too hard, because you know now those words are not neutral, they are scripts, and the world, ever faithful, has been performing exactly as directed. So you speak new lines, not outwardly, but inwardly. You walk through scenes that feel lovely, already complete, and you speak from them. You say, this is normal for me now. This is who I am. This is what life feels like when I remember. And the moment those inner sentences become familiar, they begin to harden into fact. You are no longer surprised by the shift. You expect it, not with tension, but with quiet trust. You understand that feeling comes first, and then form. That assumption comes first, and then fact. That the unseen is not future, it is the origin of all that appears. And you speak now with that awareness. You let your inner world take the shape of love, and peace, and fulfillment, not just for a moment, but as dwelling. You don't visit the state of the wish fulfilled, you live there. You don't affirm out of desperation, you speak out of identity. And what arises in that space is not only change, but clarity. You see now that the law never failed you, it only obeyed you. It followed the assumption, even when the assumption was unconscious. But now, it becomes conscious. You are no longer the sleepwalker of your own life. You are the dreamer who has awakened. You walk in the world as the state you've assumed. You do not seek evidence, you allow it to appear. You do not scan the outer for proof. You carry the proof in your being, and others feel it. Doors open, words align, moments arrange, but none of it surprises you, because the state preceded it all. And yet something even deeper begins to unfold. You realize that these assumptions, the lovely ones, the healing ones, the empowering ones, are not upgrades, they are remembrances. You are not improving, you are unveiling. But what if that unveiling has no end? What if every fulfilled assumption is not the peak, but the opening of another layer, the revelation of a self, so vast, so eternal, it cannot be held by any single desire, but speaks through all of them.
And if desire itself is the language of remembrance, then every longing is a message from your higher self, calling you back to the truth you have momentarily forgotten. You are not reaching for something foreign. You are recognizing what was already yours before the world told you otherwise. You are not becoming anything new. You are shedding the noise that said you were anything less than divine. Desire does not come to torment. It comes to awaken. It is not a sign of lack. It is the gentle pulse of memory, whispering, "This is who you are." And if you let that whisper become the center of your inner conversation, something begins to shift, not just in the outer world, but in the atmosphere of your being. You no longer feel like someone asking for light. You realize you are the light, choosing how it shines. There is a sacred intimacy in this remembering. You no longer speak to God as something apart from you. You commune with God as your own imagination, your own I amness, clothing itself in form. You say, "I and my Father are one," and you mean it, not as poetry but as law, as the first and final truth. From this place, inner conversation becomes prayer, not the prayer of pleading, but the prayer of knowing. You no longer need many words. You need only the tone of fulfillment. "Before they call, I will answer," says Isaiah, "and while they are yet speaking, I will hear." Because the answer is already held in the assumption. The fulfillment lives in the state. So you let the state speak through you. You sit quietly in the feeling of already. You listen inwardly for the voice of the fulfilled self, and you allow it to become your own. You speak softly within, "Thank you, it is done," not to make it happen, but because it already has. And when doubt arises, it will. You do not panic. You do not try to overpower it. You return, gently, to the inner word. You say again with reverence, "This is who I am," and even in that moment of returning, you are reclaiming dominion. You do not need to be perfect in your thoughts. You need only to be faithful in your dwelling. It is not the scattered affirmations that create. It is the state from which those affirmations are spoken. If you say, "I am abundant," but dwell in fear, the law will mirror the state, not the sentence. But if you speak even one word, from a place of true assumption, that word becomes flesh. So you watch the feeling behind your words. You become less interested in repeating, and more devoted to abiding. You make your inner speech an act of reverence, not because you are trying to get something, but because you are remembering the truth of who speaks. And slowly the veil thins. The lines between imagination and experience blur. What you once called unseen begins to show its face. What you assumed becomes what you live. What you lived inwardly becomes what greets you in the mirror of the day. But the most sacred shift is not the change in circumstances. It is the quiet confidence that emerges when you no longer search for proof, when you no longer ask if the law is working, because you are the law in expression. You become soft in your certainty, kind in your assumptions. You bless even the delay, for you know it is not denial, but gestation. The seed has taken root. The garden is blooming in unseen soil. And as you rest in that invisible bloom, a new question begins to arise, not of fear, but of wonder. What else have I been sent here to remember? What deeper version of I am longs now to speak through me? And if that deeper version of I am is waiting just behind the next thought, then the silence between your words becomes sacred, not empty, but alive. A quiet womb where divine identity takes shape, moment by moment, word by word. You feel it now, not as a concept, but as an atmosphere that surrounds you, breathes you, becomes you. It isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it speaks in the smallest shift of tone, a softening of your inner reply, a gentler word, where before there was panic. You notice yourself responding differently, not to impress the world, but because your self-perception has changed. The voice you trust most is no longer outside. It is the one speaking from within, dressed in the feeling of your fulfilled desire. You no longer ask, "Can I have this?" but rather, "Who must I be, inwardly, for this to feel natural?" And when you find that identity, not by effort, but by assumption, you speak from it. again and again, until it feels like home, until it stops being a state you visit, and becomes the place you live. This is the mystery Jesus spoke of when he said, "The kingdom of God is within you." It is not found in seeking, but in settling, not in striving, but in assuming your inheritance. And inner conversation is how you claim it, not with noise or repetition, but with stillness, direction and faith. Feel how holy that is, to know your words are not empty sounds in a void, but currents of creation. You do not need to be loud to be powerful. The most world-altering declarations are often whispered. They are felt more than spoken. They are carried not by volume, but by conviction. So you stop measuring your spiritual growth by outer shifts. You measure it by how quickly you return to the inner truth, by how gently you revise the story, by how faithfully you dwell in the end. Even when appearances seem unyielding, and something tender happens, you begin to love the waiting, not because you crave delay, but because you trust the unfolding. You see now that nothing is ever lost. The moment you assume the state, the bridge begins to build. The path forms under your feet, not because you planned it, but because you believed. And your belief was never in the world, it was always in yourself. Not the surface self, shaped by years and memories, but the eternal self, the I am that cannot be shaken. That is the self who speaks in you now, the one who knows no impossibility, the one who sees every desire, not as a test, but as a cue to awaken. So you answer each longing, not with desperation, but with identity. You hear the old thought of doubt, and you do not resist it. You simply replace it. You speak over it. Like light dispels shadow. I am already that. I have already become. It is already mine. And with each repetition, the inner voice becomes clearer. Not louder, just truer. Not demanding, just unwavering. You begin to recognize the tone of your true self. Not the voice of lack, but of divine memory. And you follow it. This following is not passive. It is the most active kind of faith. You live from the end before the middle makes sense. You prepare the room before the guest arrives. You speak the word before there is proof. And the world responds, not because you begged it to, but because you became the one who always had. And still, something deeper calls, not for more doing, but for more being. What if there is a level of assumption, so pure, so simple, that the moment you enter it, the very concept of time disappears, and what you once waited for stands before you, as if it had never been absent. And if the moment you enter the pure state of assumption, time collapses, then what you've been waiting for is not delayed by the world, but by your own remembrance. The moment you truly know it is done, not in the language of hours or days, but in the timeless realm of consciousness, where all things already exist. You step into that realm, not by effort, but by identity, and in that state, the future bows. There is no striving in this space, no negotiation with fate. You do not wonder when it will happen. You feel the texture of already. You live from the tone of fulfillment. You hold the scene like a sacred melody in your soul, and the melody plays itself outward. The rhythm of assumption becomes the music of experience. This is why you must not rush, not because delay is noble, but because stillness is powerful. You do not plant the seed and scream it into bloom. You rest, knowing the soil is faithful. So it is with imagination. Once you've impressed the desire upon the inner, you no longer rehearse the how. You embody the result. And this embodiment is not forced. It is quiet, deep, organic. It begins with a single conversation, a sentence that feels like truth. I am already there. This is my natural state. Everything supports the version of me I've chosen to be. You speak it not to convince, but to stabilize, not to summon, but to anchor, and the world around you begins to echo it, not because it is kind, but because it is obedient. The world is yourself pushed out, Neville said, not metaphorically, but lawfully. What you say within becomes the script life reads from. Your assumptions are not ideas, they are orders. So when you speak now, you speak with holy awareness. You are not merely thinking, you are forming, not daydreaming, but directing, not hoping, but knowing, and that knowing softens you. It removes the grasping. You don't chase the reflection, you change the source. You don't beg the outer to shift, you turn inward, and ask, what am I being right now? And in that question, you reclaim the only true place of power. Being is not something you wait for, it is something you choose. It does not require the world's agreement. It requires only your alignment, and alignment is as simple as a sentence, as still as a scene, as light as a sigh. You go within, not to escape, but to restore. You imagine, not as fantasy, but as instruction. You assume not with strain, but with peace. Because you remember now, you are not creating reality, you are selecting it. Infinite states exist. You do not need to build a new world. You need only to dwell in the one that already contains what you desire. It is there. It is finished. You enter it not by force, but by feeling, not by asking, how will it come, but by saying, this is where I live now. And once you live there inwardly, the outer begins to align, not through coincidence, but through law. You are no longer surprised by the movement. You are moved by the stillness that caused it. But what if even your current desire is but a shadow of something more divine? What if the voice of inner fulfillment is only the beginning of a deeper unveiling, the remembrance, not only of what you can have, but of who you've always been? And if what you've longed to have was only ever a mirror, then what it reflects must be something far more sacred than the thing itself. It is you, not the passing self made of circumstance, but the eternal essence that imagined this life into being. And if you look closely, not with eyes, but with awareness, you'll see that every desire has carried the same hidden message. Remember who you are. The things you wanted were never about possession. They were invitations, echoes, clues. Each longing was a thread leading you back to the garment of your true identity. Not a better version of the old self, but the unveiled presence of the I am, the holy root behind every branch of your becoming. And now, you speak not just to change your life, but to awaken yourself. You listen to your inner voice, not as habit, but as revelation. You begin to notice how every sentence you whisper within either expands that self, or contracts it. There is no neutral inner talk. All speech shapes, all assumption sculpts. So you guard your inner temple, not with fear, but with devotion. You allow no voice to dwell within that does not honor the truth of your being. You do not negotiate with the old man, the former self built of doubt and delay. You let him pass, gently. You no longer argue. You simply say, that is no longer me, and you return to the stillness, for the stillness is not empty. It is filled with presence. It is where your truest voice begins to speak, not loudly, but with quiet authority. It says things you didn't think you were ready to believe. It calls you by names you hadn't dared to claim. It doesn't speak of earning, only of being. And as you listen, something within you bows and says, yes, that is mine. From this posture of remembrance, you live differently. You no longer chase alignment, you carry it. You do not wait for signs, you become the sign. You walk in the world as one who knows the secret, and the secret is this: nothing outside you is causing you. It is all coming from you. This is not a metaphor, it is law. Consciousness is the only reality. You are not reacting to life, you are encountering yourself through the mirror of form. And every time you shift your inner speech, you polish the glass, you refine the reflection. You don't fix the world, you reveal the truth it was always meant to display. And what truth is that? That you are not separate, not from God, not from fulfillment, not from love. You are the Word made flesh, the dreamer within the dream, the light within the vessel. You are not trying to become, you are waking up to what has always been. Be still and know that I am God, not in the sky, in you, in the breath between thoughts, in the quiet knowing that follows surrender, in the moment where you stop trying to make it happen and realize it already has. And in that realization, you begin to walk more slowly, speak more reverently, assume more purely, not to perform, but to dwell, not to impress the law, but to merge with it. You no longer need to prove anything to anyone, not even yourself. You simply be, and in the being, everything flows. And yet as the noise falls away, a new stillness emerges, one that does not need words at all. What happens to inner conversations when the self becomes so fully remembered that silence itself becomes the most powerful declaration of all? And if silence itself begins to speak, not in words, but in revelation, then you find that the most potent inner conversations are not dialogues at all, but states, carried not on the back of language, but through the breathless knowing beneath it. When the voice of God in you no longer needs to say I am, for the very air of awareness has become its whisper, then you are no longer creating through imagination, you are living from it. This is where inner speech becomes inner stillness, and yet nothing is more alive. The quiet is not absence,
it is presence purified, and it says things words never could. It teaches you not by phrases, but by identity. You feel the shift not through thoughts, but through vibration. It is not an argument, not a chant, it is a resting, a return. You no longer affirm from lack, because there is no one left to convince. You no longer imagine to become, because you are already being. Your very posture within is a prayer. Your breath is assumption. Your being is declaration. And yet this sacred quietude does not erase language, it redeems it. Every word spoken now arises from stillness, wrapped in authority. You speak gently, but the ground moves. You speak briefly, but dimensions rearrange. You do not plead, you place. You do not chase, you choose. And what you choose, in stillness, becomes law. It was always this way, though you did not know it. Even in the chaos, the law did not stop working. You were simply unconscious of your voice. You misused the holy pen, not knowing your sentences were shaping the script. But now, you write in gold. You write from love. You write from the end. This is the sacred return, the prodigal son coming home to himself. For a time, you wandered through foreign lands of doubt and striving, but in your wandering, the voice never left you. It was there, buried beneath layers of noise, waiting to be heard. And now, having tasted both the storm and the silence, you know the truth. You are the one who has power to say what is true of you, and the world will obey. The inner conversation becomes a crown. You wear it invisibly, but its radiance shines through your tone, your choices, your gaze. You no longer rehearse the fear, you embody the promise. You live as one who knows how the story ends, and therefore is unbothered by the middle. The world may still present appearances, but you do not answer to appearances. You answer to your own word, your own state, your own being. That is the law, that is the power, and in that confidence, your inner talk simplifies. You no longer battle shadows. You don't try to overpower doubt. You simply turn from it, the way a man turns from an outdated map, and walk by the light within. You say, this is already mine, and let it be. You say, I am that, and fall asleep in peace. You do not revisit it. You do not question it. You simply assume, and rest. Before they call, I will answer, and while they are yet speaking, I will hear. Isaiah spoke of this realm, where desire and fulfillment are one, where time bends around identity, where God, in you, hears the assumption, and rushes to make it visible. And yet there is still more, for even this authority, as beautiful as it is, points to something higher, a realm not of manifestation, but of union, a place where the desire itself dissolves into divine remembrance, and all that's left is love, recognizing itself through you. What happens when your inner voice no longer speaks as the created, but as the creator? And if the inner voice now speaks as the creator, then there is no more distance between the word and the world, no delay between the breath and the blooming. What once was called manifestation becomes remembrance, and remembrance becomes communion. You no longer create with effort, you reveal with awareness. You no longer seek signs, you embody source. And in this union, all striving fades, all becoming resolves itself into being. There is no higher version to chase, only the deepening of what already is. You are not unfolding into greatness, you are shedding the veil that once hid it, and in its place, the pure I am stands silent, radiant, whole. This is the secret the inner conversation was always leading you toward, not to build a better life, but to awaken the life eternal, not to receive a thing, but to recognize the one who gives, the one who is all. In every desire, it was not the object you wanted, but the self who knows no lack, the self who is fulfillment. So now, the words that arise within are no longer requests, they are echoes, ripples of the knowing that rests beneath the mind. They say, I and my Father are one. They say, I am already where I long to go. They say, it is finished, and not as metaphor, as reality. There is nothing to force, nothing to fix. There is only the remembering, and as you remember, the scene rearranges, not because you needed it to, but because it must. The outer cannot contradict the one who knows who they are. The mirror must yield, and what a holy mirror it becomes, no longer a judge, but a witness. It testifies silently to the state you abide in. You speak from peace, and the world reflects it. You walk in love, and doors open. You rest in the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and the winds shift in your favor, not as reward, but as response. And should you forget again, should the waves rise, and the old inner voice return, You do not panic. You do not argue. You simply return. Return to the truth. Return to the end. Return to the silence. You say nothing loud, but inwardly, gently, you say, I remember, and in that remembrance, all things are made new. This is your power, not to manipulate the shadows, but to shine the light, not to build a better illusion, but to dwell in truth, the truth that nothing is missing, that you are not separate, that God is not far off, He is nearer than your next thought, He is your very imagination, forever creating, forever fulfilling. You are not becoming worthy, you are remembering you were never not. So let this be your sacred practice, not merely to think better thoughts, but to know yourself as the Word made flesh, to let your inner speech rise from your true name, to speak from the mountaintop, not to reach it, to dwell in the state of already, and call it home. And if ever the noise tempts you again, whisper softly within, peace, be still, for within that stillness, all things are gathered, all things return, the prodigal thoughts, the wandering desires, the fractured images, they find their rest in the one who speaks them whole again. This is not theory, this is law, this is not philosophy, this is power, this is not becoming, this is being. You are the operant power, you are the divine imagination, you are the one your inner world has always waited to obey, and now that you remember, you will never forget.